Welcome to Leadership Reimagined on True Chat, where game-changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. Here's your host, Janice Ellig.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Janice Ellig, the CEO and founder of Ellig Group, Executive Search Advisors, where we are reimagining search. I am delighted today to welcome Kay Koplovitz, an exceptional visionary leader whose career has had many firsts. Kay is the founder of USA Network, where she created the business model for cable networks, introducing the concept for two revenue streams, licensing and advertising. In 1977, under the banner of Madison Square Garden Sports, she was the first woman to head a television network and a true visionary of what sports television would become. In 1998, President Clinton appointed Kay to chair the bipartisan National Women's Business Council. During this time, Kay saw that there were far too few venture capital and funding options for women entrepreneurs. And like Kay does, she used this platform to launch Springboard Enterprises, an international accelerator for high-growth women-led businesses. She is the author of Bold Women, Big Ideas, Learning to Play the High-Risk Entrepreneurial Game, a book she wrote to inform and inspire women entrepreneurs. She more recently published Been There, Run That, an anthology of best practices from Springboard Enterprises' expert network of thought leaders. She is called on by many for her expert advice. Kay, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today to cover your extraordinary career. Because of you, people are much more informed. I am going to start on a very personal note. I've known you for years, but what I didn't know was what this very fiercely determined, independent person, Kay Koplovitz, what started with you at the age of 5.
Well, when I was in kindergarten, and we must know that when those days back in the 50s, kindergarten was actually 2 years. We didn't have preschool. So we had 2 years of kindergarten, and I was in my second year of kindergarten at age 5, and my father had built a new home for us in a neighboring suburb of Milwaukee. And he said, and this was just before Christmas, he said, okay, we're going to move. We're ready to move to our new home, and we'll be moving next week. And I said, well, I won't be able to move. I won't be able to go with you. And he said, what do you mean you won't be able to go with us? You're going. My father was stern, and of course, he insisted that we all move. And I said, well, I really can't leave because I want to graduate with my kindergarten class, Mrs. Waters' kindergarten class, and I want to graduate with the class, and I don't want to go to a new school. And he said, you're going. And I thought about it for a second, and I said to him, okay, well, then you have to raise my allowance. And he said, well, what do you mean raise your allowance? And I said, I'm going to have to take the bus back to this town to go to Mrs. Waters' kindergarten class, and it's going to cost an additional 50 cents a week to go back and forth on the public bus. My allowance was 50 cents at that point, so now it was going to go to $1 a week. And my dad said, okay, we can do that. We can raise your allowance, but don't you ever ask your mother to pick you up. Don't ever ask for any favors. No matter how high the snow, no matter how cold it is this winter, you are going to go by yourself. And I said, absolutely. Thank you, Dad. And off I went. And I think it was my first successful negotiation. And I think about it sometimes, and I think about, actually, it said a lot about my parents. My parents wanted us all to be independent. And this was clearly an opportunity for my father to show that he wanted me to be independent and that he trusted me.
But 5 years of age, Kay, and that's where it all started, you know?
No was not an answer I liked.
That's the amazing start of your career.
Yeah, it is.
And so tell us how you then went on. I mean, you are the first woman to run a TV network, but tell us what happened. You went on to, you were overseas and you went to a lecture, as I read about this, you know, and you were fascinated with Sputnik and satellites. And you went to this lecture in London, right? Tell us about that. That was really the beginning.
Yeah, so I was a student at the University of Wisconsin, and basically one of those students that worked her way through college. I always had 2 or 3 jobs working my way through college, and I really decided before I was a senior that I should get out of Wisconsin and do something. So I decided get my backpack, $5 a day, and off to Europe for a few weeks. And I was in London. I started in London, and I was just walking around, sort of looking at the city and enjoying it, when I saw this poster for a lecture on geosynchronous orbiting satellites. And I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. As you mentioned, I was really impressed with Sputnik as a kid, both excited and frightened by the space race with the Russians. And then we had President Kennedy, who challenged us to put a man on the moon during the 60s. And so outer space was kind of in my mind. And I thought, oh, these satellites, this could be really interesting. And so I went into the lecture and I sat down and I heard the most compelling lecture on the value of geosynchronous orbiting satellites. They were at 22,300 miles above the Earth, and they had just recently been launched. And they really opened up communications around the globe. And I sat there thinking, wow, this is something really powerful. This is during the Cold War. We had the Berlin Wall and the Great Wall of China. Well, today there's no Berlin Wall. And the Great Wall of China is not to keep people out, but to bring tourists in. So times have changed very vastly. And we had a very minimal landscape of television, only 3 broadcast networks at the time. And I thought, wow, this could really have a great impact on not only people's communications, but on governments and policies and what we knew about, what we could learn about the world. And that lecturer was Arthur C. Clarke, the great science fiction writer and also a gifted scientist who really, really believed in the power of these satellites. And that power, and what I did following that was write a master's thesis on satellite communications and pursued the idea of launching a television network via satellite. But the market wasn't ready yet in the late 60s. It took 7 years longer for the change to come about in the marketplace and in order to have the opportunity to launch a television network. And that was really how the whole thing happened.
So where did you go from there?
Yes, I went to work at the Communications Satellite Corporation. Of course, because I just wrote my master's thesis on satellites, I thought, hey, I'm here. You're going to hire me, right? And it took about 6 months to get a job there. And so I was in the communications division and was a person that was promoting satellites to the more general public, what the policy, what could happen with them, what could transpire, how they would open up communications, and right in my sweet spot of what I wrote about. So that was fine. And I also had produced television as one of my jobs going through college and after college. So I was familiar with television production. I became very familiar with the satellite industry. And then I went to work in the cable industry in desperate need of something new and proprietary to offer to subscribers to get people to sign up. Mm-hmm. And then we came to the night that changed the course of television history, and that was September 30th, 1975, when in the industry we brought live from Manila the great boxing matchup between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, still today the #1 heavyweight boxing match of all time. And we were fortunate to bring that live from Manila to Vero Beach, Florida, to demonstrate for the industry and for Congress that satellites could be used for commercial purposes. And was a leader in the industry. Bob Rosencrantz is a gentleman that I did work for in the cable industry when I was working directly in it. And he knew what I wanted to do because we often talked about it. And he said to me that night, Kay, this is the night your dream comes true. And it's the night that we decided to launch what was going to become Madison Square Garden Sports.
A Thriller from Manila.
Yep.
Right. September 30th, 1975.
Right.
And Kay, you did it.
Yeah. It's amazing. What you set your sights on, you have a vision, and to be able to actually have the opportunity or to get yourself in the right position to have the opportunity. I mean, I worked 7 years to get myself in that position, to know people in the industry, to be an expert in the 3 fields I had to really know about in order to put the pieces together. And I was really fortunate, I think. As my dad used to tell me, though, luck, that's when preparation and opportunity meet.
Prior to that, it was just weekend sports, right? And
Yeah.
But you made it, you brought it from Manila throughout to the world, to Vero Beach. And it was around the world. I mean, you made sports not just in one place, but
It was the launch of the sports television industry that we know today, and this was long before ESPN. It was really the vision of what sports could mean to people. And I knew, we didn't have to do any great surveys to find out. We knew that movies were the most popular and sports were the second most popular television programming. And there was this just white space in sports, because really in the United States and probably around the world, there wasn't a lot of sports coverage during the week. It was just weekends here, wide world of sports, the baseball game of the week, etc. That was what we saw on weekends and Monday Night Football. That's all there was. And I thought, wow, sports are played every night, every day and every night. Why not have them on every evening? And that was my goal in the beginning, to have live sporting events every evening. And I think I built it up to about 550 live sporting events throughout the entire year.
But you didn't think of this as you being a woman. You thought of it as communications and satellites and bringing the world together, and you saw an opportunity. There wasn't an obstacle for you.
It was a period of time when there were a lot of things that women were excluded from. Eating clubs, golf clubs. So I had to figure out how to get around those things. But I was not really focused on the fact that I was a leader in the industry. And this week, actually, I saw one of the CEOs, one of the largest media companies based on cable, at a dinner. And he came up to me and he said, "Kay, none of us would be here if it weren't for you," because all the cable program networks really followed the model. And it was sort of odd for this person to be saying that all these years later, but it's actually true. I mean, it was the beginning of an industry, and it was the first one out there with a program network that really attracted subscribers and it became a profitable program network relatively early on.
What about for women in sports? What changed there?
Title IX basically changed things for women in sports. At that time, back when I was growing up, there were very few sports to play. And I loved competing in anything. I was a speed skater. It was my favorite thing to listen for the gun to go off and blast out of the starting gate. Title IX really did change a lot of things in sports. Took a long time for it to come into being, but after Title IX was passed, it took, again, another decade or so for schools to open up many more sports for women. I think Billie Jean King probably today still is one of the individuals who is the most progressive about getting equal pay for women in sports. You did that in the sport of tennis, of course, but today her legacy is much, much bigger than tennis and getting equal pay for women in tennis tournaments, but much more about leadership and equality for women in all different endeavors. And by the way, I do want to mention that Title IX wasn't written just for sports. It was written for women in all sorts of educational endeavors. So opening up law school, medical school, veterinary school, engineering schools to more women applicants was also very affected and positively by Title IX.
So getting back to traditional media, what do you see in terms of the media landscape, in terms of how it's going to change with the proliferation of streaming via broadband today?
We're in the biggest transformation of the media business since the advent of cable television networks. Streaming this is a major change because there's direct to consumer is the play today. So streaming through the broadband connections is really how people are really accessing a lot of their communications today. I must say that Netflix really was the first out there in a big way to change people's viewing habits. They release an entire series of a pro television program at the same time, and binge viewing became very popular because of it. And now we, of course, have others like Hulu and Prime and so forth. We have many other opportunities to access streaming programming through broadband connection. The cable television industry today makes more of its revenue from broadband subscriptions than from the video subscriptions. That has crossed over. So it's all direct to consumer today that is changing, and people's habits are changing. And it's absolutely opened up the possibility for anyone to launch a video, a podcast, a video cast, a series, a movie. It's all now the challenge of marketing it. It's not access. Anybody can have access. It's really how can you get it out in front of people and get it viewed or listened to? And that's the challenge of today. But this, just without question, is the biggest transformation since the advent of cable television.
Binge viewer.
Yeah. And, all of what we read about today about Disney and why Disney bought 20th Century Fox and the studio and all the programming and all the Fox networks. And that's to go direct to consumer along with all of their brands, including the Disney brands, the Pixar brands, the Marvel brands, all of the other companies that they bought. They are going direct to consumer. And so you ask yourself, well, what effect is that going to have on like the cable television industry or the satellite delivery like DirecTV or Dish? It's gonna change people's habits because now people are cutting the cord or shortening the cord with cable television. Some of the cable television networks that are not really too popular are probably going to disappear from the landscape, but many other options are going to be opened up on broadband, including sports. Sports is going to be quite affected by the streaming also in terms of how people can view on the fly. And today it's all mobile and direct to consumer.
Reminder that you're listening to Kay Koplovitz, Entrepreneurial Ventures, the Springboard for Change. Kay is the founder of USA Network and the first woman to head a television network. The topics we cover are visionary, and a current topic with a new game changer is released on the third Thursday of every month. These are highly relevant issues, and it is a great way to stay current on what is happening around us. Now let's return to our conversation with Kay Koplovitz. Kay, you have been a great supporter for women entrepreneurs, and you have launched Springboard Enterprises. Tell us why this is such an important venture for you and your interest in women entrepreneurs, and what is Springboard all about?
President Clinton had asked me to chair the National Women's Business Council, which was really a report to Congress on the advancement of women in business. Really, I have to honestly say it didn't float my boat because I'm really about results. I wanted to if I was going to do something like that, take a presidential appointment, I wanted to do something that had results. And after the 3 years of the appointment, I wanted to be able to look at it and say, we actually moved the needle. And I didn't think just reporting to Congress was going to move the needle because it was just reporting. So that was the time when I started looking around and saw all this money pouring over the transom in venture capital, $104 billion in 1999, 2000. And I thought, my goodness, where are the women? Women have suffered capital starvation for far too long. Getting funding for businesses, bank loans, all kinds of issues for women in funding. Women were always kind of in a second-class position. And I didn't want to see that happen in the venture capital markets, which were just exploding. They had been running for about 2.5 decades at that point in time. But they'd grown to a massive size, and I thought, we've got to get women into this. So went out to Silicon Valley, not knowing very much about venture capital, but I was on the Oracle board back then, and I knew people in Silicon Valley, and asked a few of them if they would help us figure this out. So we had this little, I'd called it my capital cabinet, figuring out what to do. And what we decided was, and I did this with Amy Millman, who was running the National Women's Business Council at the time. I wanted to use it as a platform to get women into venture capital funding. And we decided the only thing we could do is see if we could find women that would be worthy of venture funding. We did a call out in 1999, the fall of 99. We were hoping for 100 applications. We thought maybe we could find 10 companies that we could go through a training program on how to speak, investor speak, and so forth. Well, we got 350, and I knew right then. And that was just a call out from our own networks. We selected 26 of those to go through a training program on how to speak to venture capitalists, how to really tighten up your business plan, how to present yourself, and really think about the size of the market that you're going after and all these sorts of things that you have to convey. Well, 26 companies presented in January of 2000. About 350 people in Silicon Valley showed up for the conference and the presentations, the demo day. I'll bet not one person in that room ever saw a woman pitch for venture capital before that. But the amazing thing, Janice, what happened? 22 of the 26 got funded.
That's amazing.
22 of the 26 were funded. 2 others merged their business because they were in essentially the same SaaS business. One woman sold her business and one wasn't funded. And we've been doing this ever since, over a long period of time. You flash forward. So what we do is we're an accelerator of an amazing global network of over 5,000 experts in fields of technology and life science that we bring together to bear human capital that we apply to these companies and these entrepreneurs in a very highly curated and selective fashion to accelerate the growth of their businesses and help them raise capital. Today, 769 companies later, across the board, all 19 years, 86% of them raised capital. 82% are in business today. There is nothing else like this. And here's the kicker. These companies have had 190 of them have already had exits for their entrepreneurs and their investors, 19 IPOs, and more are on the way. These are women who are transforming businesses. We are about women who see a vision for a big market, can attract an A team. The talent is really important. Who do they attract to their companies? They have to have execution skills that they can demonstrate to us. It doesn't have to be as an entrepreneur, it can be in something else, but they have to be able to execute, and they have to be agile. They have to learn and adapt very quickly. And we call that coachable. They've got to be coachable because we are investing a tremendous amount of human capital in their success, and we stay with them all the way to liquidity. So each of the women who comes into our programs has a lifelong lifeline with Springboard. And we follow them onto their next, once they sell a company, some of them are serial entrepreneurs, they come up with their next company. And we're with them on their next company. So it's a really, really fantastic, I think, community on a global stage.
And Kay, they're creating thousands of jobs too, right? Tens
of thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in revenues are created by these companies. So it is really exciting and to see what they do after they have a company, after they sell a company. If they're going to raise a venture or maybe even private capital through family offices and things like this, people expect if they invest, they have to have a return somewhere. So the companies either sell like to a strategic or a private equity firm, or they go public eventually and create returns for their investors and creates wealth for the entrepreneurs. What is really great, Janice, is that these entrepreneurs are coming back and advising entrepreneurs that are coming up behind them and investing in these companies. So in a sense, this whole concept that I had when we started this is a flywheel that is creating a greater and greater community on a global stage. We have companies in 39 states and on 6 continents. So we really do walk the walk, as they say. We really do work on a global stage.
Is this a model for others to follow? And are there other models like yours out there?
I think we're rather unique. I don't know anyone else out there. There are, of course, a lot of accelerators out there. And long after we were in the market as a nonprofit, for-profit models came like Techstars, Y Combinator, and so forth. There are many, many that are for-profit accelerators, meaning that they either raise funds to invest in the companies or they take an equity piece in the companies to be in their programs and so forth. So there are different models out there. Is this a model? I think that Springboard is quite unique in the fact that we stay with these entrepreneurs and work with them all the way through liquidity. A lot of accelerators put people through their program and then it's kind of goodbye and good luck. Hope you learned something valuable. Those that have investments, or the ones that do have investments in the companies, of course, follow their investment profile. But those are selected companies from their accelerators, and that's another model, and I think a viable model. But I really don't know, especially for women, I don't know anyone that does what we do in terms of the depth, and nobody, for-profit or nonprofit, can match the results of Springboard. There's no other accelerator that I've found can come anywhere near it.
This is an amazing success that you stay with them, that you really, but you curate it to begin with in terms of making
highly
sure.
Curated. We only take about, on average, 10 entrepreneurs in each cohort. We have 5 cohorts a year that are on different industries. We start off with fashion tech, then we do biotech, devices, diagnostics. We go to both Israel and Australia. Women's health has been under-researched. Most of the research done in the medical fields is done on men. And it just doesn't work that you take men and apply it to women because we are biologically different. And that's a fact. So we that's an area that I think is coming along. And then we do technology, and those technologies change with the market. Currently, we're putting an emphasis on blockchain, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. But there are many other technologies that we've had over the years. And so we have women who are really, really moving the needle in the technology fields, which is where we concentrate.
So are there sectors that you don't get into at all?
Interestingly enough, Janice, I've thought for a number of years now, one field that we have not had a big impact in is education, which I find very strange. We did have education-oriented companies, but back when that was tied to a device. That was Blackboard and things like that. And there was no software. So people would have communications devices before the iPad and all of that. And they would sell these devices into schools, but then there was no software to run on the device. Today, it's all kind of software related. Education, tools, the gamification of education, and lots of things like this. We have some companies in that, but it's not a field that we have a big impact on. Ag tech is another one that we are recently moving into. There's a lot of technology applied to the agriculture sector, and people are very interested in foods, how their food is grown. Is it organic? What are the pesticides doing to it? Where does this come from? What are the sources of my food and my water and so forth? It's becoming much more on the scale of what people are paying attention to, what they buy and what they consume. That's another area I think that we are more recently moving into.
Kay, you've done so much in your life. You've been on boards. You've launched industries that did not exist. And we look at women, the number of CEOs on the S&P 500, it's less than 30 women heading up corporations. There are so few women on boards, 23.4%. Why the glacial movement for women in corporate America? Why can't we speed this up?
We have plenty of information and plenty of research that shows with at least 3 women on a public board, performance is better, higher revenues, better return on capital invested, all kinds of data that shows that diversification of the board. And why is that, you ask yourself? That's because people have different backgrounds. They have different interests. And by the way, having been on public boards for 35 years, the smart boards really appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that, that women are really doing the work and contributing to the performance of the company. So we did see more of that happening.
Well, you've been such a pioneer, a force to be reckoned with. You've been on boards. You pulled women along. You've done this in your career. You're doing this now with Springboard. What's next for you, Kay? What else do you want to do? You've done so much along the way. There's more to be done. You've written books. What else is ahead?
Yeah, well, there's so much. I mean, it's just a life in constant transition that I lead. And in some ways, I look at Springboard growth capital investing in women-led companies at the growth stage, which we only started 3 years ago. And I look forward to maybe finding a little bit more time, Janice, to write some, I'd say more like white papers about what I've learned about leadership and women entrepreneurs and how we really have an impact on our economy. I think that there's a lot that has been written about it, but I don't think there are too many organizations or people that really have the depth of knowledge that we've learned at Springboard, and I'd like to be able to get this out to people. And really my thinking about how it should impact where we go. Just think for a moment, Janice, with the midterm elections in 2018, the number of women that came to Congress is really remarkable. And women have different priorities. Women they have priority for healthcare, for education, for job training, for even climate change and things like this. Women are looking, they look at the facts and they bring the facts to bear, and they look at families and how we really support the largest number of people throughout our country. And I think that that's a good thing, that we need more. I think to be elected at all levels, not just congressional levels, but in the state. And so I think women bring a different sensitivity to how do we deploy capital, meaning our tax money? How do we deploy our tax money to really improve our communities, improve the lives of people? And I think that this is another area that women can have and are having an impact, but are going to have a greater impact, I think.
Kay Koplovitz, I speak to many people, men and women, but I really think you brought us the Thriller from Manila. You were the first woman to run a TV network. You have, brought us a Springboard Enterprises and, building up female entrepreneurs. I expect you are going to do another 3.0 Kay Koplovitz venture here. And I agree with you. Women are 51% of the population. We're going to hear a lot more from you, Kay Koplovitz. And that little 5-year-old girl that took herself and graduated from her kindergarten class is going to bring us a lot more. So thank you, Kay Koplovitz, for a really inspiring career and an inspiring story. We look forward to the next podcast on the third Thursday of every month. Thank you to our audience for tuning in.